Welcome back. Hundreds of people are stuck on Libya's coasts, unable to travel across the Mediterranean and unable to return home. And that's because they have to pay huge sums of money to do either. The result has been the existence of detention camps with horrific conditions to house any human being and the growing presence of human traffickers. I caught up with the special representative of the UN Secretary General and head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya at the Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend to discuss migration and what's really going on in Libya. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us. Are there any winners in a conflict situation?
Well, in these conflict situations, there are never winners because it's always the people who suffer and nobody is really happy. I'm working in Libya, regularly in Tripoli, and I talk a lot with the people. So I was there 2 days ago, walking the streets, and people, they want to have security. This is under domination, town under the domination of armed groups, and there is no consolidated state authority, no army, no police force. It's just armed groups, and people have to arrange their security with armed group leaders. And this is not a situation people are happy. So there is really a dire need to get out of this blockage and out of this stalemate.
Could this situation perhaps have been avoided if Muammar Gaddafi had not been killed?
Well, we discussed today prevention and to avoid conflicts, because before it comes to the outbreak of conflicts, many say now the intervention, or already at that time they said no intervention. This was also in the Security Council, a decision of the Security Council, and countries like Russia, Germany, others abstained. But this is spilled milk. We have a problem now, and this is after the intervention, that we have a difficult situation where the revolutionaries of that time, that they transformed into armed groups. And Libya was never a real strong state. Because if now the Libyans themselves, they reconstitute themselves after 42 years of Gaddafi dictatorship, it is very difficult, this process of nation building, because there is no tradition.
So you have a country that's rich in natural resources, but you can't access that because of the conflict situation.
Now, I'm working for the United Nations, and we are always there to mediate, not to impose, but to mediate. The Libyans have to find their solution themselves, but we can give them proposals. And one of the proposals we suggested to them, it was 2 years ago, to sit together, a group of Libyans, and to draft a political peace agreement. This is called the Libyan Political Agreement. And sitting here in Morocco, it was not far from here in Khairat in Morocco, where on the 16th of December this agreement was signed. But now, as you know, the signature and the euphoria of a peace agreement is one thing, but the implementation and the day-to-day work to bring about a government of national accord, of national unity, a parliament which really works as a parliament, and a strong president, this is not working very well, I must admit. And this requires the assistance of the international community. But we cannot impose our will. If the Libyans themselves, they put their private interests and their personal interests above the national interests of the state, we cannot do very much. We are lobbying, in particular because of the wealth of the country. And it's a conflict about oil, about power, about money.
There are still hundreds of people trying to make it across the Mediterranean into Europe. What's the UN doing to help people stay inside Libya, despite the fact that their lives are at risk?
This is a very sad and a very unfortunate development. Last year, 180,000 people made the way to Italy out of Libya, and this is the largest transit country. And 4,500 died. Already this year we have more than 500 people who are dead. What are we doing in this situation? There are detention centers where the migrants are kept by the Libyans, both state-run, but also by the human traffickers. As I said, there is no state authority, not a big state authority. So human traffickers and mafia structures, they make huge business out of migrations. I'm going to these detention centers once every month. The situation is deplorable. I have rarely seen anything like this, and during my UN career I have seen a lot. People are squeezed in a room with 200 people, and they have to sleep in shifts or in standing. They are kept in darkness over weeks, over months. And this is something which is, from a humanitarian point of view, unacceptable. I've spoken here with the prosecutor of the ICC in the Hague, of the International Criminal Court, whether not to declare human trafficking a crime against humanity. So we have to work on multiple tracks. But I'm a practical person. I want to relieve, of course, the fate of these people immediately. And the UN family, with the International Office of Migration, developed repatriation programs. Number one are Nigerians, who are fleeing the country, in particular from the north, because of Boko Haram terrorist events. There is now also, I mean, a famine there, and the humanitarian situation in North Nigeria is something where the Nigerians and the international community have really take care of. So you cannot send the people just back to their places. Now, I think one thing is really to the immediate improvement of the fate of the migrants in Libya. And this we are doing with humanitarian organization.
Some of the conflicts in Africa and other parts of the world has been attributed to a problem of bad leadership. But is that really the major problem?
Well, the governance question we are also discussing here in Marrakesh at this conference. This is an important topic. The lack of change of power. The youth problem in all African countries. I mean, 70% are below the age of 39. But are there 70% below the age of 39 in parliaments, in governments? No. I think this is a question which is underestimated. And then there are climate change and political problems like terrorism. We were discussing how to combat and how to develop strategies to combat violent extremism, particularly important for the countries south of Libya, in particular Nigeria. The highest amount of deaths, 5,300, was in Nigeria. It's the highest number of people killed are in Nigeria from violent extremists and Boko Haram. I mean, these are alarming figures. That's why the combat against terrorist organization is important, but also to go to the root causes. Why are people joining Boko Haram? Why are they joining the Islamic State? And this has to be addressed. And it's a matter of alternatives, very often alternatives for the youth. It's not only religion. There are also other reasons. Young people join armed groups, for example, if they don't see a perspective. It was discussed here at the conference that the leaders of Africa do not change regularly, and they disrespect constitution. The young people, who are the majority of the countries, they do not associate themselves with democratic process. We just finished a meeting where we discussed, is the democracy in recess? Is it getting worse? And the answer overwhelmingly was, yes, maybe. Because the young people, it's not only an African problem, by the way, it's also a European problem. They do not identify them with the democracy and the political process.
It is commendable, that these conversations are taking place at all, but I find it hard to understand why these young people, the young population that you're trying to get involved, that young population you're trying to protect, is really not part of the conversation physically.
Now, it is a multi-layer approach. In particular, if you take Libya again as an example, where there is no state, how do you start having a functioning state? Of course, you must have elites. You must have the elderly men who are usually in power. But below this, you should have, and that's what we are trying, a process of national reconciliation, community-based approaches. The municipalities are important. In Libya, the mayors of the 99 municipalities are democratically elected, but they don't have money. Yeah? So they are democratically elected, And their people, young men, women, children, old men and women, they expect service delivery. They expect schools and hospitals and food. But this is not coming because they don't have the power to do it. So on the political level, national reconciliation. On the state level, there is no alternative than to form a government of national accord and talk to the elites.
Martin Kobler, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
That is the program today. Thanks for watching. I welcome your questions and comments on any of our topics this week. You can send them to @Amarachi_Ubani or @DiplomaticChan. Join us again next time for more.